That's what, Matt, that's what, they said, from what I heard.
Yeah, TR. If they're talking,
No, thank you for asking.
Yes, actually, we have 4 different public bodies here tonight, so they each be called to order, do a roll call, then we'll get right into the presentation. So first off, our city council.
Okay, so, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. We'll call to order the joint meeting of the Plan Commission, Environmental Advisory Board, Advisory Recreation Board, and City Council for Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. We will do roll call first with City Council.
Okay. Mark Bittner,
Here.
Doug Brandt,
Here.
Shannon Derby, here. Darla Leclerc,
here.
Bill Leclerc,
Here.
Scott Steckmeister,
Here.
and Tim Petrie, Bonnie Shimolinas, and Adam Husky are all absent.
Absent. Then we'll do, when you're ready, roll call for Plan Commission.
Plan commission's called to order. Roll call.
Rick Inman. Nope. Kay Coach,
Here.
Kristen Lee,
Here.
Patricia Klein,
Here.
Greg Buckley,
Here.
Matt Heckenleinville,
Here.
and Adam is absent.
Okay, then we'll call to order the Environmental Advisory Board. We'll do roll call for them.
Shannon Derby, here. Doug Brandt,
Here.
Donald DeBrune,
Here.
Heather Gross,
Here.
Tracy Coach,
Here.
John Tillotson. How is it pronounced? Corinne Weiss.
And finally, call to order the Advisory Recreation Board. Roll call for them.
Danielle Cordy. Okay. Brian Gallagher. No. Okay. Travis Cotto.
No.
Okay. Aaron Lamal.
No.
Right. Robert Reed.
No.
Jason Sharping.
No.
Thomas Lawler.
Here. Right, Tom.
And Scott Steckmeister.
Here.
Okay.
We'll hold
What'd you say?
But you don't need more.
Adam Wachowski is absent.
Okay, all yours, Greg or Mike or
Okay,
whoever.
I'll do just a brief introduction. You know, you all know we live in a pretty incredible community that's defined by water. And the beauty of it is whether it's our river corridors or our Lake Michigan shoreline, we have benefit of public access to most of it and public ownership of much of those areas. Over the course of 2023 into 2024, city staff and council members have been active in pursuing funding for this planning initiative that we'll be talking about tonight, focusing on the area from the harbor past the South City limits to the extent of city-owned property, which is right up to the Chamber of Commerce in Manitowoc. We picked that up a few years ago from Manitowoc County. Through grant funding from various agencies, a little over $400,000 of funding has been assembled for this effort. Those grants have come from the National Fish and Wildlife Federation directly, through the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway Cities Initiative, which is, again, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation dollars directed to selected communities through the cities initiative, and then the Fund for Lake Michigan, the Wisconsin-based Fund for Lake Michigan, that funds a lot of really great waterfront planning and environmental initiatives. So that's what brings us here tonight. This is a pretty good turnout. Advisory Rec Board will just have to be happy with whatever happens today. To discuss with our representatives of our consulting team from Stantec and city staff that have a lot more technical knowledge of this than I do, which is why I'll get off the dais here, what's happening, and to get feedback from the folks assembled. This planning effort really has the potential to lay the groundwork, and it should lay the groundwork for some really good things to happen in the years ahead as we deal with fluctuating Lake Michigan levels. We've already seen that. We were putting BFRs from the nuclear plants along the shoreline a few years ago when the lake was wicked high. Now it's significantly down. We are told we should probably expect those sort of rapid cycles. We have a lot of issues to deal with along that 3.5 miles or so of shoreline, and look forward to some good discussion tonight. Thank you all for being here. Mike.
I will jump in and kind of as a city facilitator for the project with the partners and just add a few other pieces. I think really what all started this was a few years ago, Melissa Curran from Stantec and Greg went on a walk down at the beach when we had high water levels and lots of moving sand and started really thinking about the improvements we needed to make. But the very early catalyst to this was the 2012 Harbor Master Plan. So there's components of things that were in the Harbor Master Plan and then just improvements we need along Mariners Trail as well. They'll show us information about how they could we could be improving Mariners Trail and stormwater management and the beaches in front of our public facilities on Lake Michigan and improve our harbors because there are issues with shoaling and sand coming into the mouth of the harbor. And so they've got some ideas on all of that as well. Lots of awesome science that they did as well that they're going to share with us. So it's a great opportunity for us to think big, and we know we have some issues with our shoreline and with the harbor itself, but it's a great way for us to think big about that old Harbor Master Plan to get the harbor and the shoreline set up so we can make some really cool things happen along those lines as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Curran and Sarah Majerus from Stantec, our partners. Also online, we have Matt Doss from Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. He's out of Michigan. That organization works internationally across Canada and the United States on Great Lakes issues. And then we have our several team members from Amy and Sam from Lakeshore Natural Resources Partnership. And at the end of the meeting, they'll do a little bit of facilitation with you to get more feedback from all of you, and you can take some time to look at the pictures up close and those good things. So I will turn it to Sarah and Melissa. And pardon our technical issues, we are figuring it out. So.
Yeah, so, we just want to call our partners again so that they can speak. So how should dial out?
Yeah, because I did it.
Nine.
Oh, well,
So I was going to introduce you to the grant funds, but actually Greg stole all of that, stole my talking points. So really, but what I wanted to share with you is this is primarily just a planning phase, specifically for the harbor projects. There are some smaller, maybe green infrastructure projects that we will construct in the short term, but mostly the funding we have available is just to do the planning phase. And so this is really the first time that we're engaging the broader public, which is kind of immediate stakeholders in this project. So this project is, intended to evolve over time to get your feedback. So I just wanted to make sure that, we will be seeking additional funding for the construction phase. The current funding environment, we don't really know what that looks like. It could be a couple of years yet. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that we're just high level planning right now. And
after the tone, please
I did want to give Matt Doss from the
press
Cities Initiative just an opportunity to introduce himself. Matt, do you
We're
hear
now
me?
joining the meeting.
sorry, guys.
He's muted on his end.
Please wait for the leader to admit you to the meeting. You are now joining the meeting.
Okay, Matt, so
Okay, Matt, so we're
So use this one, I think.
The mute.
Yeah,
That
unmute, so
one,
Matt.
that one. Yep.
So Matt, if you wanted to just introduce yourself real quick.
If you got a bullet point.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Toth. I work for an organization called the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. We work on behalf of cities around the Great Lakes in both the U.S. and Canada. Two Rivers is a member of our organization, along with about 250 other Great Lakes cities. And we work to support our member cities on a variety of issues related to Great Lakes water quality, drinking water, recreation, other reasons that we enjoy living around the Great Lakes. So we're really thrilled to be supporting this project in Two Rivers. This is part of what we call our Resilient Coastal Projects Initiative, and we're working with somewhere upwards around 100 cities around the region to help them develop solutions to problems along their shoreline. So we're particularly looking at challenges like erosion, bluff failures, beach erosion, flooding, lack of public access, habitat degradation, things of that nature. So we've been working with Two Rivers for 3 or 4 years now. We did some early initial planning, and then we're happy to be supporting this current project. We have funding from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation that is supporting this work. And then earlier, we also had funding from Lake Michigan. So I just want to give recognition to our funding sources. And we're thrilled to be working with Stantec and all the great people there at Two Rivers. So thank you, everybody. We're pleased to be here and look forward to supporting the work.
Thank you, Matt. And so now we're going to turn it over to our colleague, Sarah Harding, and then Sarah Majerus here is actually, when Sarah's talking through some of these different sites that we're planning on doing some green infrastructure, she'll bring them closer for everyone so you can see. So Sarah, are you able to take it away?
Hello, can everyone hear me? I'm Sarah Harding. I'm a landscape architect with Stantec, working on several of these projects, coastal resilient projects with Cities Initiative. And do you want me to share my screen for the
You could.
examples?
Yeah, I think that would help, especially if you're gonna, have your cursor. And then just so you know, Sarah is going to be walking around with the printed version so people can see it up close.
Okay, perfect. Well, just on a very high level, just want to share a few tidbits about what we did as part of this project so far to come up with some suggested options and phased approaches for some improvements. We evaluated or looked at several wayside parking lots and shorelines between the wayside here at kind of Spruce Drive and Memorial Drive, all the way up to the harbor and jetties up at the north end. So backing up, we're just going to start along that route is that we looked at, some solutions to reduce the erosion or address and improve erosion, such as implementing rain gardens and improving access either by providing a safer access or connection to the water. In this particular location, there's a phased removal of some of the parking lots, and this would create room for a prairie expansion and some future remove meandering path through that prairie. In other locations where, such as the next one on my screen, this one we had noticed erosion, and so the only real change here we're suggesting is a potential swapping of an existing garden space to be a rain garden, which could still function as a manicured garden space by the Friends of Mariners Trail. It would just also function as a stormwater improvement and erosion improvement space as well. As we move further along the shoreline, another location came up where you have existing beach access. We do have some imagery suggesting that there's potential improvements for stairs or beach access ramp, as well as a changing room in this location, providing additional amenities for users. In other instances, as we continue to move along, degraded shorelines, we are suggesting some dune and native plant restoration spaces, including potential public-private partnership here near Lighthouse Inn. And finally, just to wrap up, at the harbor, some more dune restoration is a potential opportunity. Connecting the trail with between Mariners Trail and the harbor space would be maintained but improved as well. And then
If you guys want a
coastal,
discussion, we'll have time at the end.
improvements, I'll let Arturo delve deeper into those, 'cause that's more of, not my realm. Arturo, or would you be able to, talk about those? Do you want me to continue to leave the screen up, or do you want to pull up your screen?
I can share my screen. I don't know if now is maybe a good time for any questions on Sarah's presentation, or do we wait until the end?
Wait until the end.
Okay, all right. Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Arturo Jimenez. I am a coastal engineer with Stantec, and I'm the coastal team lead on this project. And on this call, my colleagues Emily Perrin and Scott Hayward are present, and together we've been working on this really interesting project from a coastal perspective. And I'm going to try to pick up where Sarah left. I'm going to share my screen here quickly and tell you about the shoreline stabilization alternatives that we're analyzing as part of our study. If I can increase the size, there we go. Can everyone see my screen and hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So this is Two Rivers Harbor, and we developed some alternatives to essentially stabilize the stretch of shoreline that is demarcated by the red line. And by bringing stability, we mean we want the beach to be stable, whether conditions are good or bad, and we want it to be stable in the long term. And we did quite a bit of data analysis, meteorological data, oceanographic data to inform these alternatives. So here we're going to briefly just touch on a few interesting things. And when we talk about erosion, the primary culprit is wave action. And in this case, the shoreline is exposed to storms that primarily occur in the fall and in the winter. And those storms can either come from two directions, basically, as you can see in this wave rows here. Those storms can come from the northeast, which don't really have a direct impact on the shoreline, but they can also come from the south, southeast, and south. And those are essentially coming straight to the shoreline, and so the shoreline is taking a lot of that wave energy, and those waves are agitating the sediments and moving them around. And between the impact of the waves combined with the fluctuation of the water levels, there really is pretty dynamic nearshore environment in Two Rivers. So, and we looked at a variety of things. We wanted to show you on this plot here in the top right, a typical storm coming from the south and southeast. And so this is all wind driven. So the wind here is really the fuel for these storms. And so what's happening is that the wind speeds are ramping up, as you can see here. And this is, a day and a half. And those high winds are generating waves over the lake. There's a lot of open water, and those waves have a lot of room to grow. And in this case, for this particular event in 1998, the peak wave height reached about 19 feet. And so, in summary, the shoreline is exposed to frequent storms from the south and southwest. The shoreline orientation is such that these storms are essentially normal to the shoreline, so it's a direct impact. There is a seasonal water level variation, and that is important because it's essentially moving the location where waves break and that is the location where sediment transport tends to be the highest. The material that composes the shoreline is erodible sand, so it's just erodible sand. And also, if you look at the shoreline, kind of going along the lake towards the south or the southwest, I guess, you'll see that the shorelines are all, pretty skinny, let's say. There's not a lot of sediment that can replenish what's eroded at the river. So, and this is primarily because there's other harbors, there's stone revetments and things that are kind of just interrupting the natural sediment. And so, to achieve long-term stability in this shoreline, we need some engineered solutions. And we came up with 3 alternatives. I'll describe the third one last. Alternative 1 is beach fill. Essentially, we just bring compatible sand to widen the beach. A post-construction beach width that is really not going to be too long because the waves already a screening recreational space, and it's also putting some distance between the waterline and the landslide infrastructure. So it is providing some shoreline protection to the shoreline. And then alternative 2 is the same beach fill, but we place breakwaters in the near shore. And the alignment of these breakwaters is such that the largest waves will be almost perpendicular to breakwaters, so breakwaters will be most effective in attenuating wave energy. And we want to be able to show you that these alternatives will help. And we are using numerical models to essentially evaluate the alternatives. And we're also taking basically 2 approaches to examining the performance of the alternatives. The first one is what we refer to as a design storm. That is a storm that has a return period associated with it or a probability of happening. And we're evaluating 4 design storms and 3 water levels, because we recognize that the water level fluctuates and it's a relatively long seasonality to the water level. And then the second one is more of a season approach, where we look at historical season that just had a lot of activity, a lot of storms, and then we see how the alternatives perform at the end of that season. And with that, I'll pass it to Scott so he can tell us more about the modeling.
Thanks, Arturo. I guess quick intro, I'm Scott Hayward. I'm a coastal engineer and coastal modeler at Stantec. I've been working with Arturo and our team, kind of passing their design back and forth, and then running that design in our numerical models, and then kind of iteratively finalizing the final details of it. But I guess to explain how we are comparing the performance of each of these alternatives, we're using a hydrodynamic and sediment transport model called XBeach. It's essentially a nearshore ocean model that can simulate waves, sediment transport, and currents, and predict how sand and other, the gravels and sediment may move during storm events. I'll show it from here. These are the 4 alternatives, or I guess the existing condition, and then the 3 alternatives that I'll discuss today. And this figure shows how we've implemented the alternatives into the grid. So the existing conditions is the the elevation of the shoreline and offshore bathymetry as it is present day. Alternative 1 has the beach fill. Down the bottom, you can see that, and that is essentially extending the size of the beach. And then for alternative 2, we've also created the breakwater by one, increasing the elevation of the grid, but also defining a non-erodible layer. So in the model, you have to tell it whether each cell of the grid is able to erode or not. Otherwise, if you just increase the elevation of the grid and run it, it just thinks it's sand, and the breakwaters would all fall apart. And then alternative 3 includes the breakwaters, but also a jetty extension to the harbor mouth that Arturo can give a quick intro to in a minute. You can go to the next slide. So I think we've used or simulated over 40 simulations just to compare different storms, different water levels in this model. But for today, we're just going to focus on one storm scenario. So we're looking at the 50-year storm and the mean lake water level. So this is kind of the most common storm that we would expect to see because the water, even when you get high lake water levels, the storms can do more damage. But the level that is depicted in this is I think around like 80% of the time, or 80th percentile is kind of near the water level that we've set in this grid, this simulation. So the upper figure here shows the wave conditions, and then the lower figure shows the bed level change during the run. So you can see the waves offshore. I narrowed the color bar down so it's really bringing it down to the small, waves that have broken, because offshore the waves are all breaking outside the harbor mouth for these larger storm events. And then on the bottom figure, you can see the red areas show where you're seeing erosion, where the bed level is decreased during the simulation, and then the blue is where you're seeing sand getting deposited. So if you look where Arturo's cursor is there, it's showing the red area at the beach. So it's pulling sediment from the beach and it's pulling it offshore slightly towards like an offshore sandbar. And over time, those repeated storms will result in beach loss. Off of the harbor mouth, you can also see there's sand getting pulled and placed near the harbor entrance towards the kind of eastern jetty there. And go to the next slide. And so for reference, I'm going to show the existing conditions that I just showed you on the right slide, and then each of the alternatives we're showing on the left-hand side here. So you can look at kind of a side-by-side of how the waves and the bed level changes are different for these two events, or these events. So you can see here with the beach fill, it moves the beach further towards the lake, but also you're seeing a greater amount of loss of sediment because that beach is steeper and the waves are actually breaking with more energy near the shoreline there. Next slide. This slide shows alternative 2 with the breakwaters. And you can see the significant reduction in wave energy inside of those breakwaters. So the wave height the breakwaters are causing the waves to break and reducing the wave energy, and also the wave currents and the energy that's keeping the sediment suspended. So if you look down in the bottom portion of this figure and look at the intensity of the colors, you can see that the erosion and deposition there is much less. So any sediment that might be placed inside of those breakwaters would be retained much better. And then jump into this. We also wanted to, in part with this, look at adding the dogleg extension jetty. So this was an Army Corps study they had done. So we were kind of focusing on, or I guess we thought while we were doing this modeling, why not also look at what the sediment would do with the kind of proposed solution to the sedimentation at the entrance to the channel. So you can jump into the next slide here. And so you can see that on the top part of the page, the waves aren't able to go straight into the harbor. They actually have to turn in to get in there. And there is almost no sedimentation at the harbor entrance. So it's significantly reducing the deposition of sediment and could in turn result in a lot less or less frequent dredging of the harbor mouth. And you can see also there were the results behind the breakwaters were pretty much identical to the alternative two. You can jump to the next one. So I guess initial findings from this. So for alternative one, we're still seeing erosion when you place that fill, but the pattern is narrower. So you're seeing more intense erosion, but it's at the shoreline, but it is still a net positive because you're bringing that material in. With alternative two, you're able to significantly reduce the wave energy near shore. So you're seeing a benefit to, if you were to place fill there, the breakwaters would help retain that fill or that sand that's getting placed there. And it would be much less likely that you'd lose that sand over time. And then alternative three is very similar to the others, but also, if we were trying to reduce the dredging of the harbor, it could be beneficial for that. So that's where we're at right now. We're also going to look at the seasonal simulation. So taking these same alternatives and then running a multi-month scenario to see what may be happening over a full season of storms. And we will be including that in our final report. I think that's it.
I'm going to jump in really quick before we go to questions and just help you with the why. So this entire stretch in front of, this is all our Department of Public Works and wastewater facilities and things like this. So that's really not getting used for recreation because the beach isn't holding in place and it's eroding out in front of our very important facilities. The grand scheme plan is that someday all of these Department of Public Works facilities actually move off-site, off the prime real estate on Lake Michigan, go somewhere else, and then this could become recreational space with access to beach as well. So it's important to keep the sand in place, make this usable. The other two components to this is Suzy Q's will tell us that in certain conditions, they come up off a wave and they slam down and they can hit sandbar currently off the end of our pier. So they're kind of in a risky situation because how much sand comes into the mouth of our harbor. And then Siegel Marina will tell us also, especially in September and October, when the storms start to come in, that's still good boating season, but there are more storms. So they cannot dock as many boats, or boats are getting pulled out and they're losing business at Siegel Marina. Also, that inner harbor, we do very little other transient docking or temporary docking inside that inner harbor because even minor storm events, wave events, will push waves up the channel into that core harbor area. So that's kind of the why of why we even care about fixing the erosion here and improving the access and doing that. So I thought that was important.
Yeah,
It's very important.
If I could mention too, that Arturo made reference to the earlier Corps of Engineer study. I want to say it was about 2012, 2013, quite a while ago. The city and the Corps of Engineers jointly funded a planning project that looked at alternatives specific to the harbor entrance, and that's where that southerly dog, the South Pier extension of Dog Lake came up. That preliminary indications that was by far the best solution for both reducing wave action in the harbor during storm events and possibly sedimentation. So this is kind of exciting to see that the modeling shows that to be quite effective. The city has pushed hard with the Corps of Engineers to get a study evaluating our overall harbor design because it's problematic the way it opens up to the south-southeast and makes it vulnerable to those storms, both for the wave conditions, so they're snapping mooring lines at Seagull, and depositing enormous quantities of sand right between the piers. We haven't gotten very far from Corps on that. There was and is a $200,000 appropriation for a study. They've not moved forward with the full study, but one of our big arguments, and I will say, I like what I'm hearing here is, let's do a little cost benefit on what's the savings from reducing the frequency of maintenance dredging in the harbor entrance. If it's not every 3 to 5 years, but it's some longer period, that can be beneficial to the Corps and the city. And that's going to be a hard sell for a small, mostly recreational port, because you're talking a very significant investment to do that sort of installation. But if we don't have it in a plan, we don't have some preliminary design concepts and aren't ready when there's a funding opportunity, and whatever the politics are, every so often the economy goes into a recession and the federal government spends money on infrastructure. We're still living off WPA infrastructure. So this is valuable and it is consistent with what we've seen. And just one bit of trivia, most of you know this in the room maybe, but Colonel Roberts of the Corps of Engineers, Green Bay office at the time, designed our harbor in the 1880s. In retirement, he wrote Robert's Rules of Order, same guy. So we think he was better at running meetings than designing harbors. And with that historic note, I'll step back. Thank you. This is cool stuff, and it's very important. This city's going to make the case ongoing to have a viable Lake Michigan port in that channel for access to the Big Lake, and not be footing the bill ourselves, because that would be very.
With that, do we want to open the floor for some questions? We'll have our engineers and architects step off as we enter the town hall portion of the meeting, but if there are any questions.
Alternative 3 is the one Lake, and I can't stress the point Greg made, because the entire river system, we're talking about shoreline, I'm talking about the river development, the marinas up. As far as our harbor park, you cannot safely park a boat there without sufficient padding to prevent the surge. The surge really impacts and reduces the limitation to park boats, docking, and also restricts some of the activities that could be further developed all the way up to 17th Street. The surge comes all the way into our city. And to reiterate Greg's point, the harbor channel itself is a federally responsibility to keep it dredged, safe water. While there'd be some savings by a dog lake as a solution for the federal government too. And I don't know if we've gotten into the analysis of that, what it costs to dredge, but I think there'd be a benefit to do it too from this future expansions of dredging the harbor. So,
Is that something the Corps has ever looked at?
The Corps, I'm sorry, the Dog Lake issue.
Yeah, Corps of Engineers.
Yes, they looked at alternatives, and they were primarily in that earlier study looking at mitigating wave action. And they looked at alternatives, including a rubble wall right at the steel sheet mound, where everybody sits on plastic buckets and fishes, down below at Harbor Park. Putting a rubble mound there, it might mess up the fishing, but it would be a shock absorber if those waves come in right now and carry them off the steel sheet mound. That wasn't super highly effective. Another alternative reviewed was a large rubble mound offshore of the harbor entrance that sunset. But it does seem, given the prevailing actions, the source or sediment transport as we understood it, and as what I just saw seems to affirm, a lot of that is coming from the south, so that extension of the south jetty with a dog leg does seem to make some sense and affirm what we've heard before.
Do they indicate that their dog leg would, eliminate some of the surge activity upriver to, not shoreline, would make it easier to go and
That's,
one part?
yes, it was, and again, that was the primary focus. In fact, we kept saying afterwards, what good would it do us on the dredging? Would it reduce the frequency of the dredging? So this may be another piece that's really helping that argument. Because right now, I mean, Mike is working and we'll have a resolution in front of council Monday night at work session to apply again to the state's harbor assistance program or HAP for dredging money. Because in our meetings this spring, for engineers, Chicago, they don't have any money budgeted for the program for 2026 or maintenance dredging our harbor. And Susie Q's already concerned about bottoming out because of the shoaling in the harbor. So.
And Sarah and Melissa, correct us if I'm wrong with your engineers, the dog leg does greatly reduce wave action up into the inner harbor, I would assume, in all senses.
Yeah, Arturo and Scott, can you hear us? Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker. We're gonna have a hard time hearing you, so I'll try to repeat the answer. The question is regarding the dog leg, and concerns related to dredging, I'm sorry.
How impactful.
How impactful that dog leg will be
To
the inner
wave
harbor.
action, yeah.
To wave action in the inner harbor, because there are some anecdotes regarding difficulty of anchoring boats and just recreational enjoyment in that area. So no real question, but that's the discussion, just so the folks on the phone know.
On the beach to the west of the harbor, so we really only looked at that storm from the south. And with the orientation of that jetty, it would provide a lot of a pretty significant wave reduction for that southerly component storm. But I would think that if the storm is coming from the east, it may cause waves to still bounce into the harbor. So it would, I can't imagine it would be worse than it is currently, but when you have that easterly component, it would be probably less affected than it is for those southerly storms.
And
Two things. One of the nice things about this area is that the storms are very almost predictable in which way they come. So they either come from the southeast, or the northeast. So we know that it is very unlikely that there would be a big storm that is going to come from, like right where the opening of that new harbor will be if it was constructed. So anything can happen, of course, but statistically it would be less likely because the data indicates that the largest waves will come from the south. And then secondly, so that south jet extension will provide protection from those waves coming from offshore. There's another component in harbors that is sometimes referred to as harbor resonance, and that has to do more with reflection off of, let's say, sheet pile walls or revetments, steep revetments, and so that is another improvement that the Army Corps looked into in more detail, and so those improvements inside the harbor, like just creating less reflection off of vertical structures, plus the south jetty extension will be should result in much better conditions for users of the harbor. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question?
Can you explain more about the, what's going on at the two waysides there and why?
The So Sarah, we're talking about area 3 and area 5 waysides. So maybe I can start fielding a question. Area 3, there's a lot of runoff coming off of Memorial Drive, specifically in this general area. And so, with all of these alternatives, there's a phasing option, and also, the idea we could do some of the alternative and not everything. So keep that in mind, because I know these are maintained gardens that people work really hard on. In some of these areas, we're proposing new things. So the idea is to help curb the runoff, no pun intended. We would do a curb and gutter along the far edge of this parking lot. And then beyond that, the water that's running from that area would run into a newly formed rain garden, which could be maintained or more naturalized like a prairie garden. That would increase the infiltration of that runoff so that it doesn't run directly overland into the lake, protecting the path and the shoreline downstream in Lake Michigan. So that's the primary purpose of this at area 2. Sarah, am I missing anything?
No, for area 3, that's the only improvement was addressing the erosion and drainage improvements.
And there's some pictures of current conditions here that you all can get closer to and see.
And there's some, we haven't really talked about these sort of design concepts of what this images of what it could look like. So they're still very garden-like. It's just they're gonna, be different kind of garden than what they currently are.
I can say as a Mariners Trail gardener, and maybe we have some here as well. At first, I fairly levitated out of my chair when I heard those gardens get replaced with rain gardens.
Yeah.
But there's an incredible amount of surface drainage that surges acting off Memorial Drive after a heavy rain. And just speaking as one gardener, I've got a few cubic feet of wood chips that are down over the bank right now. And the city didn't help by putting bases under those benches where the concrete goes all the way back to the crushed stone and spans the area between the crushed stone by the big rocks at the wayside and the trails, because there's no vegetation there that stops any of the runoff. So there is indeed some merit to that. I did my own Army Corps project and put a river stone line channel to capture the water and take it through. But we do want to be working very closely with Friends of Mariners Trail, because what we have out there right now still is nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
From
It's
visitors and
It's so impressive to see what you guys do. And again, they can still be very garden-like. It's just a different part of different type of garden. What a great educational, opportunity to have these sort of wetland type gardens right in this very public space.
And a great place for
The other-
demonstration projects.
The other wayside?
This one?
Yeah.
Area 5.
This one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so area 5, we're looking mainly at access improvements. There's a small component of stormwater management, green infrastructure, in that we would replace some of the crushed limestone that's underneath the existing limestone boulders with a naturalized garden. And that would increase, by replacing that gravel with soils, it'll increase infiltration, prevent the runoff from running overland over the trail and into adjacent gardens, again, on the shoreline. So, and then the city had been talking about increased access to the shoreline on some of these waysides. The stairways don't have railings anymore and are fairly treacherous, especially when things get wet. So we were considering some alternative access options that could be put along more relaxed slopes, which would allow improved access to the beach.
And that is the northernmost wayside, so it has the least elevation difference between the roadway and the beach.
It also has by far the most beach. Because once you go farther south, farther than Manitowoc, there really is no beach. And so this is the place where you could actually use beach.
Anything to add there, Sarah?
What's with the bathrooms?
That was my idea. I'll fess up. Just try to improve access if we want to use the beach, get people's access in there might be a nice amendment. But again, we have no money on this yet, so this is all theoretic.
And this is conceptual. conceptual at this stage, and that's why we're put this together so that we can start the conversation.
This past Sunday, I walked the beach. It's a beautiful sight, there's not much south of the point you mentioned, but that all the way up to the breakwater and the piers, it's a wonderful stretch. I noticed the culvert, I think it was from the Columbus area, the culvert becomes underneath. It was the only point that I couldn't continue to walk. It was quite active and there was a lot of water with recent rains, but there was a channel there to prevent it. Is that a concern at all, or that be addressed in this project of, like, putting some kind of?
Is that Forget-Me-Not Creek or is that further up?
No, that would be further up, that's the statute.
It's a storm drain.
Columbus.
Plymouth Street storm drain.
Yeah.
So-
It's a culvert, it's,
Down here? Okay, so,
Yes, it is.
There's some pretty incredible falls.
Right here.
I think one of the concerns with bathrooms would be people starting to camp there. Because it would be easy to not be easily seen down there and camp all the time. You'll see some of that even without that. But not having facilities keeps them from camping and staying.
you're not allowed to make working in lakesides too.
But yeah,
Can't we just post a sign that says no overnight camping?
We do lock
we
them.
love it if you would put your comments down on some of these sheets, so there's things you like. That's it. I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I can design,
Yeah.
or design, I can state what the thing is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's basically the concept, but you all have pink, blue, and green sticky notes at your table, and for those back there, I have a couple more on that table over there. So you can go walk around, and if you could just write a couple of things for each design. Pink is, I like this because, to make us feel better about ourselves. Blue, things you're concerned about. And green, if you have other ideas for things that you would think should be added to this project. And then also on that table, I have 3 ranking sheets for the one that's more of the coastal over by the harbor. Yes, that. So there's option 1, 2, and 3, the beach fill with breakwater, and then beach fill, breakwater, and jetty. And if you can just put a tally mark, and if this is your first, second, or third option for that, that would be wonderful. And there's pens, and if anybody needs anything, I'll be over there.
And with that, I think we'll close the Q&A session with our team online, if it's all right, unless there's one more question.
One more question, maybe for the engineers. The breakwaters in front of the utility area, what would they be made of? Are they rubble? Are they hard jetty type material? How far do they stick up off, into above the water generally?
Yeah, great question. Arturo, do you want to hear the question?
I did, yes. So we are envisioning the breakwaters to be made of carbon, something like limestone. And the breakwaters will have an outer layer of relatively big stone and a core of smaller stone. We are envisioning, or at least relations we have currently at elevation, I think it's Great Lakes Stadium, so that's approximately above the mean water level in the lake historically. And that seems to perform quite well when the water level doesn't exceed the crest elevation. And I think if we wanted to achieve the same performance for a high water level, for example, the highest water level in the record, which is something like 582, I believe, we would need to raise the breakwaters. So there's some balance there to be achieved between the cost and the possibility of some of these events happening. You know, we don't want to be something that is too big and it's just going to be good for 1% of the time when the water level exceeds a certain value. We want something that is going to perform most of the time. And so we're still fine tuning those parameters.
Another thing we talked about is incorporating some aquatic habitat components on the backsides of the breakwaters.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
How old are the north and south pier? What's their stability and what's their life expectancy?
We have that information, Arturo and team. You know the answer?
I can tell you.
Did I hear the question correctly? How stable is the south jetty?
How old and how stable are the north?
Life expectancy.
And what is the life expectancy of the north and south jetty? Yes.
I wonder if the Army Corps, I suspect the Army Corps study from 2017 has some of that information that I don't have off the top of my head, and I don't know if the South Jetty has had any inspections in recent years. I know sometimes, and not very frequently, but they undergo inspections, and maybe we can look into that as well. But that we know of the South Jetty is in good shape. And most of these rock structures have anywhere between a 30 and a 50-year useful life. So, that's a good question. Thank you. We'll look into that.
Both piers have seen major rehab within the past 25 years. That's a long time, but I think in our discussions with the Corps, and understand until maybe 3 years ago, Two Rivers was under the jurisdiction of the Detroit district. That got shifted to Chicago, so there's a new cast of folks that we've gotten to know, but their assessment was that the structures are not a great objective statement, but relatively good condition. They've seen rehab, because I think the north one was originally a timber work filled with stone. It's since had, it makes for that reverberation and wave action, but they've lined it with sheet piling. That really, our piers are in pretty good shape. The southerly one was extended somewhat as well with the project.
Greg, didn't you do some kind of repair there when we put in Harbor Park?
Well, that was within the harbor, Harbor Park. Kay mentions harbor, now Coast Guard Park, a little bit of Coast Guard Station. We've recognized for a long time this problem with the harbor entrance, and when the city went before the Wisconsin Waterways Commission for some of the funding to build that beautiful park and rebuild the whole shoreline over on the east side of the East Twin. The chair of the Waterways Commission at that point said, well, this is kind of silly because frankly, you can't tie a boat up there now with your harbor conditions. It's not safe. You're, even if you put bumpers up, there's a good chance your boat will get chewed up. And we said, well, that's true, but timing isn't always perfect. And the park we're talking about is literally falling in the river. Some of you might remember that was just wood pilings with concrete caps, and I don't know how many yards of gravel the city over the years dumped because it just kept subsiding and falling away. So, reinvestment, continued reinvestment in harbors is a big issue. We've been beating the drum on that for quite a while. Don't know what current trends at the federal level portend for that. Dredging is out of a harbor trust fund that basically is from surcharges on shipping and passenger traffic. So, assuming our Congress leaves money where it's supposed to be, we don't always do that. There is money in these for maintenance.
Greg, wasn't also, if I'm thinking back, one of the things we read into a lot was the federal government, because they're under the impression that the center of that harbor belongs to them. And we were told that more than once, especially when the Coast Guard station was still.
We kind of like the federal channel
Yeah.
because that's where the feds have responsibility to fund maintenance dredging.
which always used to irk the heck out of me, because why we were paying to dredge what they were claiming is their property was beyond me.
Because they weren't paying for it, it wasn't good enough.
And
And God bless America, the state of Wisconsin has a $15 million appropriation each year. Last time we did it, and we may want to do it again, because we can sit here and be frustrated at the feds or, Susie Q bottoms out coming into the harbor, or get something done. And the last time we did it, actually, the city had provided a dredge disposal site out in our industrial park in some undeveloped property off Miro Drive, and that counted as our local match. I'll credit notably the two council members, Leclerc and our former state senator, Andre Jacques, and our former state rep, Shay Sokol, on this one. At the last time the city paid for harbor dredging, the state would not permit beach nourishment. So we took clean beach sand and put it in dump trucks burning petrochemicals and hauled it to an upland disposal site. The state has since changed the law, thanks to some good work from a number of coastal state reps and some good lobbying, I'd say, in the city of Two Rivers. And it is possible. The Corps of Engineers is exempt from, as I understand it, from state permitting on dredge disposals. But now that's possible because it's silly to take clean Lake Michigan bottom sand and put it in dump trucks and haul it away. Mother Nature moves around tens of thousands of yards every winter out there. So.
And the last action by the federal government, the dredge, their part of the responsibility, that interfered, or they dumped it over the north side and created a remarkable beach right below the Coast Guard station. And that lasted for a period of time to practically eroded one away.
That's something we've discussed. The city has a lake that lease granted by the state that allows for that deposition of dredge material here near shore. If we get around to doing some building up the beach south of the harbor, that beach nourishment from Corpus maintenance dredging could be an easy, inexpensive source for that. But it's all going to wash away without the additional measures identified. I'm close to retirement, so let's talk a lot. One other thing, and Matt over here, our city engineers point me in on this. If you've ever taken the trail out to the South Pier, which coastal management helped us improve, pretty cool trail past the mural out there, the fish mural. There is a loop section of the trail that runs along by the utilities and public works. And if you've never been back there, that is a magnificent piece of south-facing Lake Michigan shoreline. What do we do there? We have our public works facilities, and we pile up busted concrete, and we grind it up into aggregate each year. That activity should very shortly be moved. We've had discussion last night. Mr. Hector and I will with the Community Development Authority of the city, which has jurisdiction over the city's industrial parks, to move that activity to a site in the Columbus Industrial Park where it would get that activity off the lakefront and begin opening up more area for public recreation use there. I dare say the city's not going to remove its public works, street facilities, or the water and light shops in the near future, but that's at least part of the dialogue now, and that may be 10 years down the road. Water plant and wastewater plant, I dare say, ain't going anywhere. That would be terribly expensive, but there's a big footprint, and it's shown it on some of the plans here, of area that could see both public recreational development and back away from the water edge, potentially some private taxpaying development. So that area presents quite an opportunity.
What does it cost to dredge the harbor?
You know, we were just talking the other day about getting some fresh unit costs per cubic yard. I mean, we've seen on the order of 900,000 to 1.4 million. A lot of it's in mobilization, right? That many contractors with water pouring plant that can come in
And that was just the city's responsibility, wasn't it, Rick?
well, no, that's been when the feds have done it too.
But what did we pay, just the inner part? I thought we paid 700,000 just to dredge the inner part.
You know, I'm sorry, I don't recall the stats right off the top of my head.
It's expensive.
It's very expensive, and it's not the sort of thing a small city like Two Rivers can sustain. It needs to be federal and state law.
Have you, now I'm referring to the breakwaters, the north and south pier. Have you tried any computer modeling of different structures, alternative structures like a dog leg to the south off the north pier, or outside of the breakwaters, a winged cap, so to speak, to cut down surges? I think what you showed there would probably help, but you're still gonna have to serve it anyway. So thinking of something in front of the harbor where you get away from the harbor, get the waves back away from the harbor. I know that the commercial fishermen here, they don't agree with that dog leg off the south front of the pier. Exactly, they would prefer to see something the other way, or the outer harbor having a cap, so to speak, out in front of it, where some wing piers would come out further. So I don't know if you've done any modeling on those alternatives or not, but would it be possible to try that?
So those were certainly in the Army Corps study that they done, and we based our design off of kind of one of their recommended approaches. There are three ones that they had looked at were that dog leg on the west side, east side, and then the breakwater that went directly in front. I think the reason we selected this one was based on the predominant wave directions that we saw. But we could certainly implement the other designs into our erosion model. So if it's something you're interested in, we could definitely look into it.
Just FYI, we are under a severe thunderstorm warning, but we'll keep track of things, and if you have to take any measures for shelter, you will be advised. The stairway is to the north, and hopefully that's just a custom.
That'd be great if you can try that,
Yeah, we'll certainly make a note of it.
because
Can I ask why the fishermen are opposed to the?
well, we always pile up the sand because we have a permit from the DNR north of the north breakwater.
Okay.
So if the water level's higher, like it was last time we pumped it out there, if that sand doesn't, a lot of that sand went right straight back out into the harbor.
Sure, okay. Interesting.
Which, another thing the commercial fishermen thought would be a better idea, let's try putting it on the south side of the pier. Now, the Corps of Engineers believes that the sand moves to the north, and most fishermen don't agree. They think that you have such a strong amount of southeast and east wind in the wintertime that it actually blows the sand the other way.
Okay, just curious.
In other words, nobody's really proven either way, you know. You guys are saying that it looks like we would push it from the south to north, but
Yeah, that's
I don't know if
something
I agree with that.
we can add
And
to.
another idea that was talked about was when they built the nuclear plants, they actually sunk ships and barges to create a dry bed in the lake. We're wondering if could instead of, if it would be a cheaper alternative just to test breakwaters by sinking large not ships, but barges.
Interesting.
Just sink some barges in the same configuration, maybe,
Yeah.
just to see what would work better. No, that might be really expensive, but
These are all really great questions. I think with this, we'd like to move into more of an engagement activity where you can ask questions as we're milling around. And then please, yes, provide your feedback as instructed by Sam. We're gonna let the team online sign off if they need to. And we'll relay any further questions to them and then back to the group.
Can you recap again what your expectations are from us now, what you want us to tell you?
Yeah,
Shall we still pick option 1, 2, or 3 here?
Yeah, so there's two separate components to the project here. There's the Mariner Trail alternatives. We'd like you to look closely at the different alternatives that are being proposed at the three-way sides. Keeping in mind that these approaches can be applied in various situations and scenarios. If there's another wayside, as was mentioned earlier, with a potential issue, please make us aware of it if it's something that you think would be important to prioritize. But we did a site visit, we looked at erosion on site, we talked with Matt and Mike and Greg about priorities the city has seen over time. If there's something we're missing, please make us aware of it. When looking at the coastal analyses, we would be interested in knowing which of the alternatives you'd be most interested in, or, as this gentleman just pointed out, are there other alternatives that you'd like us to address?
You can place your specific ones on the boards themselves, according to each, if you have those specific.
Before we do that, we're gonna have each of the committees adjourn then, so that way you can go up and mingle, and then if you wanna leave, you can then let's leave at your convenience.
And the live casting will cease upon the end of the formal meeting.
Correct.
Which is about 2 minutes.
So, we'll start off with city council. Sure. We'll need
Motion
the,
to adjourn.
yes, motion to adjourn from city council first. So Mark,
Second.
and Mark and Darrell. And we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? City council is now adjourned. Now we'll do the plan commission. If you
I'll
could-
make that motion.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Matt. And then same thing, voice vote. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I almost voted. Don't be bad, I know. And finally, we can't do EAB because there's just 2 of us here, so that's not enough for a quorum. So we'll look for a motion from EAB. So, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And again, voice vote. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I did vote.
It's not all about you.
I know, it's not about me.
Thank you, everybody. Mingle, share your thoughts.
Yeah, and Melissa and Sarah know a lot about this project too, so